My name is Alex, and ever since I was a kid, I dreamed of creating video games. It wasn't just a hobby, it was an obsession. While my friends were playing sports, I was teaching myself how to code from library books. I filled dozens of notebooks with sketches of characters, maps of fictional worlds, and complex plots. That all-consuming passion is what led me to Stormgate Studios, my absolute dream company. They were the legends behind the Chronicles of Etheria series, games I had spent hundreds of hours playing. Getting an interview there felt like winning the lottery. I prepared for weeks, studying every game they had ever made. When the email arrived, my hands shook so badly I could barely click the mouse. "We are delighted to offer you the position of junior game designer." I screamed so loud I probably scared the entire neighborhood. This was it, the true beginning of everything I had ever worked for. I was ready to work harder than anyone else, to pour every bit of my creativity into this job. I couldn't wait to prove myself and finally contribute to the magic I had always admired from afar. The first day at Stormgate was overwhelming and incredible. The office was a gamer's paradise, with life-size statues of iconic characters, neon lights, and the latest consoles in every break room. The energy was electric. My boss, Mr. Croft, was a serious man in a sharp suit with a firm, no-nonsense handshake. He gave me a brief tour before introducing me to my immediate team. There was Sarah, a friendly programmer who immediately smiled, and Ben, a senior designer who gave me a welcoming nod. Then I met David. David was the lead designer, and he had been at Stormgate for 10 years. He was the golden boy, the celebrated creative genius behind their latest hit. He shook my hand, but his smile was thin and didn't reach his eyes. It felt more like an assessment than a welcome. I told myself I was just being nervous, that I was reading too much into it. I was determined to learn from him, to earn my place on this legendary team. For the first few months, I kept my head down and worked tirelessly. I was given small, mundane tasks, fixing minor bugs, adjusting enemy difficulty levels, and proofreading dialogue. But during our brainstorming meetings, I slowly started gathering the courage to share my own ideas. I suggested a new type of environmental puzzle for a dungeon and a rich, emotional backstory for a minor side character. To my surprise and delight, the team loved them. Mr. Croft would nod approvingly and say, "Excellent initiative, Alex. That's the kind of fresh thinking we need." I started to feel like I belonged. But I also noticed a pattern. David would get very quiet whenever my ideas were praised. Once, I saw him crumple a detailed sketch I'd left on my desk. He quickly smoothed it out when he saw me looking and said, "Just cleaning up. We can't have a messy workspace. It looks unprofessional." A cold, tight knot formed in my stomach. This was not my imagination. The excitement in the office was palpable when the next big project was officially announced. Etheria's Legacy, the highly anticipated sequel. Everyone was buzzing with creative energy. To generate core concepts, we were put into small groups to pitch ideas for the game's central direction. I was partnered with Sarah and a brilliant concept artist named Leo. We spent every night for a month working on our pitch. My big idea was a dynamic, living world where player choices genuinely and permanently changed the story's outcome, characters, and even the game's geography. Our presentation was a massive hit. Mr. Croft called it groundbreaking and exactly what the franchise needs. After the meeting, David pulled me aside in the hallway, his voice low and cold. "You're moving pretty fast, kid," he said. "Don't forget who's in charge here. Your job is to assist, not to try and reinvent the wheel." The warning was crystal clear. I was a threat to him. A week later, Mr. Croft called David and me into his sleek, glass-walled office. "The board loves the dynamic world idea from your pitch," he said, a rare smile on his face. "David, I want you to lead the project. It's a huge responsibility. Alex, you'll be his direct support. I'm counting on you both. I expect great things from this partnership." I was thrilled. My idea was going to be the very heart of the next great Stormgate game. But when I looked at David, he was staring at a spot on the wall, his jaw so tight I could see a muscle twitching. He was seething. Later that day, he dropped a massive, dusty stack of old design documents from a decade ago on my desk. "I need you to digitize and archive all of these," he said flatly. "It's crucial we preserve our history before we charge forward." It was pure, meaningless busywork that would take me weeks, completely isolating me from the actual development of Etheria's Legacy. It felt like a solid wall being built right in front of my career. The next few months were incredibly frustrating. I was stuck in a corner, digitizing ancient documents while the real, exciting work on Etheria's legacy happened in closed-door meetings I was never invited to. I'd watch David and his small group of close friends leave for long, loud lunches, laughing together. Sarah would sometimes give me a sympathetic look, but never said anything. Feeling starved for creativity, I started working on my own concepts at home, just for myself. I designed a full, revolutionary combat system based on skill chaining and elemental reactions, and documented it all in a heavily encrypted private file. It was my creative escape, my sanctuary. I called my best friend, Jake, often to vent. "He's strategically isolating you," Jake said, his voice full of concern. "He's threatened by your talent, and he's making sure you can't shine." I didn't want to believe someone could be that calculating, but the evidence was piling up. The breaking point came during a major team-wide presentation to department heads. David was showcasing the early progress on the dynamic world system, my system. He was explaining it poorly, missing key elements that made it actually work, making it sound confusing and flawed. I couldn't stay silent any longer. The project was at stake. "Actually," I interjected, trying to sound helpful, "the causality engine primarily links to the character's hidden morality score, not their inventory. That's the key to creating those permanent, meaningful consequences we talked about." The room went completely quiet. David's face turned a dark shade of red. "I appreciate your input, Alex," he said, his voice dripping with cold condescension. "But this is a highly complex system you're not fully briefed on. Let's not confuse everyone." He had expertly made me look like an ignorant fool who didn't understand my own creation. The following Monday, I was called into Mr. Croft's office. David was already there, sitting with a somber, disappointed look on his face. My heart immediately sank. "Alex," Mr. Croft began, not meeting my eyes, "we've received some very serious concerns." David spoke up, his voice filled with feigned sadness. "It's about the core design documents for Etheria's legacy. They were found on an unsecured, public cloud server. The potential security breach is a massive, unforgivable problem." I was utterly confused and horrified. "I only ever use the company's secure internal server," I insisted, my voice shaking. David shook his head slowly, playing the part of the disappointed mentor. "We have the digital trail, Alex. It was traced back to your user login." The realization hit me like a physical blow. He had fabricated evidence. He was framing me for leaking company secrets. I was fired on the spot for gross misconduct and profound incompetence. Walking out of the Stormgate offices for the last time felt like walking away from my own funeral. My dream job was gone, ripped away from me. My professional reputation was in ruins. The official story, carefully crafted by David, spread through the tight-knit gaming industry like a wildfire. I became Alex, the incompetent junior designer who couldn't handle the pressure and tried to steal proprietary data. I updated my portfolio and applied for dozens of other jobs, but the rejection emails were swift and brutal. Not a good fit for our team at this time. One hiring manager, who knew my old professor, was brutally honest over the phone. "We heard about what happened at Stormgate. I'm sorry, son, but we can't take a risk on someone with that kind of reputation." David had successfully blacklisted me. He had made sure no other studio would ever touch me. I was completely shattered, my dreams seemingly dead forever. For a full month, I fell into a deep depression. I stayed in my small, dark apartment, living on my dwindling savings, playing video games listlessly and feeling utterly sorry for myself. The future I had envisioned was dead. Jake finally staged an intervention. He came over, bought a large pizza, and said, "Look, they think you're not good enough? Prove them wrong. You've been designing better games than they make since you were 12. Do it for yourself, not for them." That night, after he left, I opened my laptop and looked at the private file containing my combat system and world ideas. It was good. It was really, genuinely good. A fire I thought had been extinguished forever sparked back to life inside me. If no one would hire me, I would hire myself. I would build my own door since they had locked all of theirs. I decided to name my company Phoenix Games, symbolizing a rise from the ashes of my old career. In the beginning, it was just me, my laptop, and a desperate, burning need to prove myself. To save money, I made the difficult decision to move back in with my parents. They were supportive, though visibly worried about my risky venture. I worked day and night, every single day. The game would be called SoulForge. It would use my fully realized dynamic world idea and my revolutionary combat system. It was a wildly ambitious undertaking for one person. I was the designer, programmer, artist, writer, and janitor. The days and nights blurred into one continuous cycle of work. It was the hardest I had ever worked in my life, but for the first time, I was fully in control of my own destiny. A full year passed in a whirlwind of code and caffeine. SoulForge was slowly taking shape, but the reality of the costs was crushing me. The art assets alone were a huge, unexpected expense. I decided my only hope was to try a crowdfunding campaign. I poured my entire heart and soul into the pitch video, scripting every word carefully. I showed early, unpolished gameplay clips and talked passionately about my vision for a game where every single choice carried real weight. I didn't mention Stormgate or David. I focused entirely on the game and the dream. The funding goal was a daunting $50,000. It felt like $1 million. The campaign launched, and for the first agonizing 48 hours, it barely moved. I felt sick with fear. Then, a massively popular gaming news site featured it, calling it a breathtakingly ambitious indie project to watch. Overnight, the donations exploded, flooding in from all over the world. The campaign ended 30 days later with a staggering $200,000. I was in a state of complete shock. Thousands of strangers believed in my idea enough to invest their own money. It was the validation I had been desperately craving. This money meant I could now hire a small, dedicated team. I found a brilliant freelance artist online named Chloe, whose style was perfect for my game, and a meticulous sound designer named Marcus. We worked remotely from our own homes, connected by a shared passion for the project. The pressure was now immense in a new way. I had taken people's hard-earned money. I had a solemn responsibility to deliver a masterpiece. Every day was a new challenge, but we were building something special, something honest, together. Another 2 years flew by in a focused haze. SoulForge was nearly complete, a vast and intricate world. The buzz in the gaming community was steadily growing. We released a small, polished demo, and the player response was incredible. They loved the freedom, the consequence system, and the deep combat. Around this time, I got a direct message from Sarah, my old colleague from Stormgate. "Heard about SoulForge," she wrote. "It looks absolutely amazing. Everyone here is secretly talking about it. You've done an incredible thing, Alex." It felt like a warm balm on an old wound. She also let slip that Etheria's legacy was stuck in a notorious development hell. David's watered-down version of the dynamic world was clunky, full of bugs, and critically panned in early previews. It seemed karma was finally starting to stir. The launch day for SoulForge finally arrived. I was a complete nervous wreck. What if it was a flop? What if we had missed some game-breaking bug? What if the reviews destroyed us? At 8 a.m. sharp, we pushed the button. It was live. Jake, Chloe, Marcus, and I sat in my now cramped home office, endlessly refreshing the review sites and watching the sales counter. The first major review came from a top-tier gaming magazine. They gave it a perfect 10 out of 10. SoulForge is a masterpiece, the review read. It genuinely redefines player agency in storytelling. Another perfect score followed. Then another. We were being hailed as the indie game of the decade. The relief and joy were overwhelming. I broke down and cried happy tears for the first time in years. We had actually done it. SoulForge was a commercial smash hit, a true underdog story. It sold over 1 million copies in its first week alone. Phoenix Games was suddenly no longer a one-person operation. It was a celebrated, respected studio. We were invited to every major gaming convention around the world. The moment I first walked onto the enormous convention floor and saw a massive, beautiful banner with our game's logo, I finally felt like I had truly made it. Players lined up for hours to get our signatures on posters and game cases. They cosplayed as our characters with incredible detail. The love and excitement from the community were overwhelming and deeply real. This was the dream I had always had, and it was even better because I had built it with my own 2 hands from nothing. One afternoon, my new assistant told me I had an unscheduled visitor. To my utter surprise, it was Mr. Croft, my old boss from Stormgate. He looked older, tired, and the confident aura he once had was gone. He sat down in my office, which was now bigger and brighter than his had ever been. "Alex," he began, clasping his hands, "what you've accomplished, it's nothing short of phenomenal." He sighed deeply, the weight of his words evident. "I need to be honest with you. I made a terrible mistake. I trusted David implicitly. After you left, the project completely fell apart. Etherea's legacy is a publicly acknowledged disaster. The board is furious, and our stock price has plummeted." He looked me directly in the eye, his gaze filled with regret. "We found the irrefutable evidence. David planted the data leak to frame you. He was terrified that you were going to take his job. I am so very sorry." Mr. Croft then presented me with a formal business proposal. Stormgate wanted to license this SoulForge game engine for all their future projects. It was a multi-million-dollar offer, more money than I had ever seen. I listened to him politely, my hands steepled on my desk. The company that had thrown me out like garbage now desperately needed my technology to survive. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I thanked him for his offer and told him I would need to discuss it with my board, a board that consisted of me, Jake, Chloe, and Marcus. After he left, I felt a calm, profound sense of closure. The truth was finally out. I had been completely vindicated, but I felt no burning need for revenge. I had already won by building my own empire from the ground up. A week later, I received a call from the organizers of the Global Games Awards, the most prestigious and glitzy event in the entire industry. SoulForge was nominated for 5 awards, including the ultimate prize, Game of the Year. I was also personally invited to be a presenter. I knew exactly who I would see in that audience. I bought my first ever custom-tailored suit for the occasion. When the day finally arrived, I walked the bright, flashing red carpet, my name and face flashing on giant press walls. Cameras flashed constantly. For the first time, I wasn't nervous or afraid. I was filled with an immense, quiet pride. Inside the vast, dark auditorium, I took my assigned seat near the front. I spotted David a few rows back and across the aisle. He was slumped low in his chair, looking defeated and small. Stormgate's game had received 0 nominations, a very public humiliation. He looked like a ghost of the confident man I once knew. He caught my eye for a single, uncomfortable second, and then quickly looked away, his face filled with pure shame and regret. There was no anger or hatred left in my heart for him, only a distant sense of pity. He had tried so hard to break me, but he had only succeeded in pushing me directly toward my true destiny. The announcer called the name of the category I was presenting. I took a deep breath, stood up, and walked confidently onto the giant stage, the warm lights shining down on my face. And the award for Game of the Year goes to... The famous presenter opened the golden envelope. A huge, genuine smile spread across her face. SoulForge from Phoenix Games. The entire room erupted in thunderous, roaring applause. I stood there frozen for a second, letting the incredible sound wash over me, feeling the weight of the moment. I walked to the podium and took the heavy, golden statue in my hands. It felt solid and real. I looked out at the sea of famous, talented faces, at the people who had once been my distant idols. 2 years ago, I began, my voice clear and steady in the microphone. I was told I wasn't good enough. I was told I didn't belong in this industry. You could have heard a pin drop in the massive auditorium. Every person was listening intently. I was blacklisted by powerful people. I was made to feel that my dreams were foolish and arrogant. So, I had no choice but to build my own table. The crowd immediately burst into cheers and supportive applause. I waited for it to quiet down. This award isn't just for me or for my incredible team. It's for anyone, anywhere, who has ever been told they're not good enough. It's for the dreamers, the coders working in their bedrooms, the artists with full sketchbooks and empty wallets. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you can't build your own empire. As I finally left the stage, holding the award high, the entire audience rose to their feet, giving me a prolonged, heartfelt standing ovation. The next day, my story was everywhere online and in print. From Blacklisted to Game of the Year. The ultimate revenge story is one of success. My company's inbox was flooded with thousands of messages from aspiring developers all over the world, thanking me for my speech and sharing their own stories. Phoenix Games had become a global symbol of resilience and believing in oneself. Inspired by this, we started a small, non-profit program to mentor young, overlooked talent from underrepresented backgrounds. I made a solemn promise that our studio culture would always be about collaboration and lifting each other up, not the toxic competition I had endured. I never wanted anyone on my team to feel the way David had made me feel. About a month after the award ceremony, I received a formal, typed letter in the mail. It was from David. He was resigning from the games industry entirely. He wrote that he was deeply and truly sorry for what he had done, that his own jealousy and insecurity had consumed him and ultimately destroyed the career he loved. He admitted that watching me succeed with integrity where he had failed with deceit was the hardest, but most necessary, lesson he'd ever learned. I read the letter twice, then filed it away. I didn't write back. There was nothing left to say. My forgiveness wasn't about making him feel better. It was about me finally letting go of the last bit of heavy weight from the past. Today, Phoenix Games is thriving, working hard on our next, even more ambitious project. Our studio is filled with passionate, talented, and kind people from all walks of life. I still wake up some mornings and can't quite believe this is my reality. Being blacklisted was the most painful, humiliating experience of my life, but I can now see it was also the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to bet on myself when no one else would. They tried to bury me alive, to forget I ever existed. But they didn't know I was a seed. And from that dark, lonely place, I patiently grew an entire, thriving empire, one built on passion, hard work, and the unwavering belief that I was, in fact, good enough.